Hello and welcome to episode 261 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva. We're coming off of one of the highest scoring weeks in DFS history. PSM model was absolutely popping. All the good plays, team pay the best plays was also popping. Evan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Wild things happening in Las Vegas. I mean, there's a coach out that had 6 years and $60 million or really almost $70 million left on his contract. We'll talk about how that's going to affect potentially the rest of the season for a Raiders team that started out really hot. We'll go through everything. Let's jump into it.
On today's show and each Tuesday this season, Evan and I will go team by team, highlighting the most important things we saw from a fantasy perspective the previous week. Before we get into it today with the NFC, two things. First, the NBA season starts Tuesday. Coming up real quick, our NBA team, led by Drew Dinkmeyer, led by Mike Gallagher, two of the best and most in-tune NBA fantasy players in the world, will be covering every single slate just as intensely as we cover every single NFL slate. The difference, of course, is that there's an NBA slate every single day. It is a massive undertaking, very, very difficult to compete without help from guys like Dink and Gallagher. Head to the subscribe page. You'll see in the drop down an NBA section. We do have two products, DFS product and a props product. Second, this show is brought to you by our friends at prizepicks.com. I have been loving the player props grind, and I know, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have access to legal player props because you're in New York or California or Texas or Massachusetts or a bunch of other states that don't have regulated sports betting. Prize Picks is legal and regulated in those states. You can bet their props in parlay form to help. We have a table up each week to compare our projections to the Prize Picks lines. We're also in Discord, firing off some stuff. I know Leone and Dink are in New York. They like to blast off on Prize Picks some as well. If you want to give Prize Picks a try this week, they have a 100% instant deposit bonus up to $100. Use promo code ETR to get the best deal, or use the link in the show notes. Again, promo code ETR at prizepicks.com. Let's get into it with the NFC here. Evan, Cardinals moved to 5-0, but they did have I don't want to say significant injury, but it's notable at least. Max Williams looks like he's going to be done for the season after hurting his knee. I did see Rondale Moore's routes bump up a little bit. I did see DeAndre Hopkins' target share bump back up to kind of what we expect from him. And maybe Max being out had something to do with that, or maybe it's just random. I don't know. They get the Browns and the Texans the next 2 weeks do the Cardinals. What do you see out of them, and how do you think the Max Williams injury changes things, if it does at all?
Yeah, I think that it has the potential to change things in that the Cardinals may further lean on more four receiver sets, which would help the guys at the bottom of the depth chart. Rondale Moore, although he had 6 targets and three carries for 38, I mean, clearly they want to get him the rock. And I think that this will allow them to get Rondale Moore the rock more, because he's just going to be on the field more. I'm not assuming that he's going to all of a sudden become an every down player, but we're taking anything that we can get at this point in terms of his enhanced on-field presence. And I do think that this could bump him up. The arrow has been pointing up, and I think that it will continue to point up going forward.
Let's go to the really good game, by the way, between Cardinals and Browns coming up this week. We'll talk more about that on Friday. Let's go to the Falcons. Falcons played the London game, got a reasonably solid win. Of course, it was over the Jets. As we kind of talked about last week, CPAT wasn't playing a ton in week 4, had that outlier game, but he's earning more. I mean, CPAT played on 46 out of 78 snaps in London, 24 as a running back, 22 as a wide receiver. His touches per snap are absolutely out of control. Now, this was a game Calvin Ridley didn't play, so they were forced to use him more, but man, it's so obvious. Like, I hate to be on Team Watch the Games, but if you're on Team Watch the Games, you can't watch and think, you'd have to be a moron to just be like, we have to get Cordell Patterson the ball more and more and more and more. They even let him throw a pass in that game in London. What'd you see out of the Falcons win over the Jets?
Yeah, and I was considering him a sell high, and this is someone who he's carried me. I'm in either first or second place in the pros versus Joe's challenge on FFPC, and he's really almost carried me in my running back position because I went really, really light on running backs, and he was my last pick in the draft. So I'm rooting for him, but I thought he was a sell high after last week. And now after this week, I mean, you're right. He has earned more playing time. Calvin Ridley was out, but as we also discussed, like they are desperate for playmakers. They're playing a bunch of scrubs at the skill positions outside of Pitts, Ridley when he's been available, and now CPAT. And Pitts wasn't doing very much in the first 4 games. Now we had this breakout game. I thought was pretty foreseeable. We talked about on the Sunday morning show that Daigle was going to play Dawson Knox over Kyle Pitts, and that was after Kyle Pitts had just gone, nuclear. Dawson Knox wound up having a great game too. Mm-hmm. But we finally saw that connection hit with Kyle Pitts and Matt Ryan, who has quietly played pretty well 3 games in a row. I still don't think that he's anywhere near his peak performance, but they have stretched him out, let him throw the ball downfield a little bit more. I don't know that I'd be leaning on him in fantasy. I think they're going into their bye this week, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So Ridley should be back after that. I don't know. What do you think about Ridley as a buy low?
Yeah, so I mean, teams who have Ridley are likely struggling. I mean, they could easily be 1-4, 0-5 at this point. I think you can probably get him pretty cheap because it's hard to go into another week without your second round pick. I like buying Ridley. Before this game against the Jets, we saw his ADOT start to creep back up towards where it was in 2019, which I thought was encouraging. And yeah, on the Kyle Pitts stuff, obviously when Ridley and Gage are out, I mean, everything has to go to Kyle Pitts. And when you're playing the Jets, it's going to be efficient as well. So yeah, it was good to see on Kyle Pitts. Let's go to the Carolina Panthers. This was a bad Darnold game, man, and we've obviously been driving the Sam Darnold bandwagon. He looked really bad against the Eagles, and they kind of choked this game away, which seemed unnecessary, especially because I have a bunch of Carolina to make the playoffs bets. The good news for Carolina is it looks like, I think, Christian McCaffrey is going to make it back this week. They released Rodney Smith from their practice squad, signaling that maybe they do expect Christian McCaffrey back for week 6. I thought the Chuba Hubbard usage was really good, though, in week 5, and kind of in that CMC role, he played a good game. DJ Moore came back to earth. What did you see out of the Panthers' loss to the Eagles?
Yeah, just was a really bad combination of Sam Darnold constantly staring down his first read, and then the Eagles getting a ton of pressure on him. I think he was pressured on at least 50% of his dropbacks. The Eagles defensive line just went ham. Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, the Panthers offensive line, which already was kind of problematic, was without its left tackle Cam Irving. And, Sam Darnold was just pressured a lot and staring down his first read. He threw a bunch of picks and, you're right. They choked the game away.
I think he had Robbie. And Robbie's been so bad and it's been so tough. And I played Robbie in a bunch of tournaments on DraftKings. I thought he was too cheap for the spot. And he had Robbie open for like a 50-yard touchdown. Sam Darnold underthrows the ball, it gets tipped away. I mean, it was a struggle for Sam Darnold. And I want to keep the faith on Robbie. Like his price is going to keep getting cheaper and cheaper in DFS. It's just tough at this point to click Robbie for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, Joe Person of The Athletic has covered the Panthers for a really long time. Wrote an article about the struggles of Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson's the highest paid receiver on the team, and they're not able to get him the rock, and he's getting frustrated. And a lot of it just has to do with protection. As we've discussed, from as opposed to last year, the DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson have essentially flipped roles. DJ Moore's getting a lot of the layups, and Robbie Anderson is running a lot of the low percentage downfield stuff. And when you can't protect, it's hard to consistently make completions down the field.
Chicago Bears go to Las Vegas and get a win in a game they controlled. And it's been weird, man. Justin Fields has not been forced to run, but I didn't think that his rushing floor was this low. He's played 211 regular season snaps. That's like 3.5 games worth. His rushing line is 20 carries, 59 yards, no touchdown. I mean, it's hard to play him if he's not going to run. I know there are certain games and game scripts where he will, but in a lot of these game scripts, he's just not running. Also, Khalil Herbert played way more than I thought. 34 out of 64 snaps for Khalil Herbert. He only ran 7 routes. He didn't get the goal line work. Damian was more involved in the pass game. Damian was more involved at the goal line. But still, that's a lot of work for Herbert. And we know David Montgomery's going to be out a while. I'd certainly pick up Herbert if I could. I wouldn't be excited about playing him, but he's in a near 50-50 timeshare right now. What do you think about that? And what do you think about the Bears win?
Yeah, no, I think you summed up the backfield situation perfectly. This is why you got to take a stab on guys like Khalil Herbert, because neither you nor I had, a great feeling about that he was going to get a lot of work, but you just don't know what's going to happen when backfield situations like this shift, and you can be surprised. And then, and we were surprised, but it made that pickup pretty savvy, because Khalil Herbert, you could pretty much get him for nothing last week. Now he's going to be a really hot item on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
And Damian, people were paying a lot for Damian Williams. Yeah, the Bears have been able to be ultra conservative with Justin Fields. Now he has made 3 starts. His rushing attempts in each of those games are 3-3-3. His pass attempts are 20, 17, and 20. So they are being extremely conservative with him. In the first game against the Browns, it was just because they got absolutely smacked in the mouth, and that was Justin Fields' first start. And then they played the Lions and the Raiders, and neither of those teams was very competitive on the other side. So they didn't have to put their foot on the gas. At some point, they will, but that's not the way that they want to play. It's not going to be game planned if that is going to happen. Maybe it'll happen this week against Green Bay, which, Aaron Rodgers can come out hot, grab like a 14-0 lead. The Packers are still going to be missing Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith. Maybe it'll happen this week, but it's not going to be a part of the game plan. They're going to game plan to be conservative. It's going to have to be a product of the game script.
Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. This Dalton Schultz thing is not a mirage, man. I mean, last 2 weeks, 51 routes on 68 Dak dropbacks. He's earning a huge target share, and it's really coming at, I don't want to say at the expense of CD and Amari, but it's tough. The bigger problem for CD and Amari has been how strong Dallas's defense and how strong Dallas's run game has been, because now we're in a spot where Dallas has a negative pass rate over expectation. And that includes the week 1 game against Tampa, where they threw it like a bazillion times, because everyone throws it a bazillion times against Tampa. These last 4 weeks, they have had a massively negative pass rate over expectation. And so it's hard for me to find 10, 11, 12 target games for CD and Amari. It just really is. The defense is playing well. The defense is playing too well. The running backs are playing too well. So I still like CD and Amari. Dak is playing out of his mind. It's hard to find huge ceilings, though, given the setup that they currently have. What do you see out of Dallas? Kind of easy win over a Giants team that came in banged up and left so banged up.
Yeah, and it's pretty impressive that the Cowboys have been able to play such competent to actually, on the range of competent to really good defense, even despite missing a bunch of guys up front, including DeMarcus Lawrence, probably their best defensive lineman. He hopefully will be back eventually. But yeah, I mean, they really look like a complete team right now. And so they don't have to play with their hair on fire offensively. You're right, Dalton Schultz, he's just earned it. His role has expanded. Blake Jarwin's usage has gone down. Dalton Schultz, nearing more of that true full-time tight end. He's not there yet, but he's trending in that direction. I think that we just kind of know what the deal is in this offense largely each week. Dalton Schultz does have this big role. They've got 2 backs. It's, pretty much a 65 or 60-40, 65-35 or 60-40 split between Zeke and Tony Pollard. Zeke looks like, this is maybe the best he's ever looked. Actually, Dak Prescott said that this week, that he thinks that this is the best that he's ever seen Ezekiel Elliott look. The offensive line is kicking ass. They've got actual depth on the offensive line. So if they do encounter injuries, which they probably inevitably will, they'll have a good guy that they can stick in. Now they're rolling really not just as an offense, but as a complete football team.
Yep, they're a very, very good team right now for sure. Bad team is the Detroit Lions, and they lose Quintez Cephas. I mean, they already have so many problems at wide receiver. Now Quintez Cephas breaks his collarbone, making them even thinner there. I think that it's crazy, but they've actually done okay in the pass game given their personnel. They've moved the ball reasonably. They also have TJ Hawkinson, who I think is pretty clearly playing hurt. And when TJ Hawkinson is priced at 52, 5,500 and he's limping around out there, it's tough to click him. What you see out of the Lions in week 5?
Yeah, all that. And then DeAndre Swift set another season high in snaps played. And now they were trailing for, I think, almost the entire game. But he went up to 74% this week. And, Jamal Williams is going to remain involved. And when Jamal Williams is in the game, like, they give him the rock. But DeAndre Swift, his role has expanded. It continues to expand. And he had another good game in the box score.
Let's go to the Green Bay Packers. And, everybody's talking about A.J. Dillon. And I was really high on A.J. Dillon in season-long drafts, trying to get him a bunch in the 9th, 10th, 11th round. His ADP started to really spike up there at the end. I thought he would have some standalone value. And, he looked like he had standalone value in week 5. But still, his role did not change much. Still only 33% of the snaps. Still only 10 routes run. He just happened to get 4 targets on those routes. Now, he looked really good, and he looked really smooth in the pass game. Has he earned more? And, that's kind of the thing that we talk about. I don't want to get too bogged down and just say, well, he's only playing 33% of snaps. He's only running 10 routes. He's never going to see more. He could see more. Jamal Williams got a little bit more playing next to Aaron Jones. So I thought that's at least interesting and notable on A.J. Dillon. And if Aaron Jones ever went down, I mean, my God, A.J. Dillon would just absolutely erupt. What'd you see out of the Packers game?
Yeah, so in week 4 against Pittsburgh, it looked like we could just kind of chalk up the the enhanced role for A.J. Dillon to the Packers, like kind of controlling that game and, just mixing in their number 2 back. But this was much more of a neutral game script game that, went into overtime because nobody could make a field goal. And A.J. Dillon was, involved in the neutral script. So I think it's a little bit of a concern for Aaron Jones. I mean, Aaron Jones is going to be fine. But, sometimes we want more than fine, right? We want great. And I think that this can sort of threaten Aaron Jones' upside week to week. I mean, A.J. Dillon had, 5 red zone carries in this game. And, he's been effective both in the run and pass games. So I think it's sort of trending toward more like an Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard situation, which is sort of what we envisioned. I felt like entering the year. And then A.J. Dillon came out really slow, but he's back in position to where, with the bye weeks coming up, which thank God we got some bye weeks now. That's a couple less games I got to write up. But people are, and there's so many injuries, man. So A.J. Dillon all of a sudden is in the mix in a season long league as like an RB2 option, certainly a flex play.
Do you have any Big Bob Tonyan take? Like, what would you do with Big Bob Tonyan if you had him in season long?
Oh, man, it's really, really frustrating because he is running a lot of routes, but the efficiency has not been there from last year. I mean, it was never fair to expect Aaron Rodgers and Robert Tonyan to maintain a 90% catch rate, right? But they're down to 50% this year. It just seems like they're not on the same page. Tonyan's averaging fewer than 4 targets per game. He's got 1 target inside the 10-yard line. I think you just got to view him as like a guy that if he doesn't score a touchdown, like he's going to hurt you. And there are a lot of tight ends like that. I mean, there's like freaking 20 tight ends like that. Yeah. And now he's in that group, and that's not a fun place to be. Yeah,
we'll talk about Ricky Seals-Jones in a minute here. We'll talk about Dan Arnold on the next pod. I mean, there's some options. I'm not sure if they're better than Big Bob Tonyan, but we'll talk about it. The Rams. This game feels like it was forever ago, last Thursday, but it was like the ultimate squeaky wheel spot. Like Robert Woods was bitching. McVay was saying, we got to get him the ball more. I mean, and then Robert Woods goes out there and gets like a 40% target share, just goes absolutely off. Van Jefferson started to rotate a little bit more with Deshaun Jackson, 23 routes on 38 Matthew Stafford dropbacks for Van Jefferson, 15 routes for Deshaun Jackson. And my last thing on this game is, I know they want Darrell Henderson to be like the Todd Gurley workhorse role. He just keeps getting nicked up. I mean, even in this game, it looked like he got nicked up and Sony came in and got a bunch of carries. He got like 8 or 9 touches on one drive, did Sony, while D. Henderson was nicked up. What'd you see out of the Rams win last Thursday?
Yeah, I wish that Darrell Henderson could stay healthy because when he's in there, he runs with a lot of velocity. He's got a lot of juice as a runner. He's pretty good in the passing game. He's clearly, their preferred dude, even though they traded what amounts to a 4th-round pick for Sony Michel. Clearly, they prefer Darrell Henderson. But yeah, we're going to have to continue to monitor his health week to week. Robert Woods, the buy low window has kind of shut on him. I think he's going to be good to go going forward. I know that it was a little frustrating early on. They're trying to feed a bunch of different weapons, and they do have a lot of weapons. But I think that Robert Woods is going to be in the mix a lot more than he's not involved going forward. He's a really good player. They know that. They have been like very aggressive about feeding him touches over the years. Like, he leads the NFL among wide receivers in rushing attempts over the past 3 years. Like, they're not going to let him evaporate from the offense.
Let's go to the Vikings, who get a narrow win over the Lions at home. Predictably, Alexander Madison goes off with Dalvin Cook out. I think this Adam Thielen stuff is interesting. He's 31 years old. And, I just tweeted his yards per route run. I mean, my God, it was 2.33 in 2017, 2.10 in 2018, down to 1.86. And this year, Adam Thielen yards per route run, a pathetic 1.34. He's missing juice. He's still a great red zone option for them. But, man, it seems like he's missing juice out there in a big way. And obviously, Justin Jefferson is just an absolute baller. What do you see out of the Vikings? And what do you think about Thielen in season long at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's going to be a guy that's a little bit more reliant on touchdowns than other wide receivers. And, maybe the wide receiver 2 every week expectation should be diminished to wide receiver 3. I still think he's a fantasy starter. But, yeah, I mean, that was a good tweet by you. The trend there, it seems ominous. The Vikings have a bye in week 7. This is week 6.
Mm-hmm.
If assumption of rational medical decision making, shouldn't they hold Dalvin Cook out one more week? Then they could essentially hold him out 2 weeks. Madison's balling. It makes all the sense in the world to give Madison another full workload, head into the bye, come out of the bye, and hope that Dalvin Cook can keep it together for the second half of the season.
Yeah, it seemed like Dalvin was pretty close, and this game against the Panthers could end up being a pretty big game for them in the wild card race. So I could see them maybe trying to get him in there. But I agree with you. If it was me, I mean, like, their win probability difference between Dalvin and Madison is like almost nothing. But they don't understand that. Even though Mike Zimmer is our sex god, I don't think he understands that there's really not big a difference between Madison and Dalvin in win probability. New Orleans. I don't have a lot to say on New Orleans. I will note that Taysom Hill is in the concussion protocol, and also Deontay Harris, who's actually been playing a ton, hurt his hamstring in this game. The stats in this game are a little bit bloated because there was a wild Hail Mary that Marquez Callaway somehow came down with at the end of the first half.
We only had to hate that one, huh?
Yeah. So I thought football team would win the game. Football team is just devastating me when the season long future stuff. But anyways, we're on New Orleans now. What'd you see out of their win up in Washington?
Yeah, and there were like kind of press clippings that Alvin Kamara, after the Week 4 game, received 0 targets, first time in his career. He comes back 8 targets against the football team. So, Sean Payton is paying attention. I know that it's been a little up and down for Alvin Kamara, but he wound up being a pretty good tournament play this week.
Yep. No, I mean, Alvin Kamara's usage is just absolutely elite. I mean, outrageous. And
he's on pace for like 400 touches, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. Insane. And his price on DraftKings, is manageable, and he always comes in at like 4% every week. The problem is that Derrick Henry has been in such good spots. Derrick Henry's spots are starting to get worse now going forward. We'll talk about that on the AFC pod. Giants, man. I mean, these injuries, I mean, Sterling Shepard and Slayton both go down. And so they have some depth there, whatever. They have Tony and Galladay. Maybe they're okay. But now they lose Barkley. Now they lose Daniel Jones. Now they use Galladay. I mean, you're looking at like really thin talent now. Bright spot is obviously Kadarius Toney, who, despite the punch, and this dude seems like a total head case off the field. On the field, though, credit to the Giants. I mean, he looks like a baller. 16, 267, 0 the last 2 games. And I thought one thing important to note was that he played both inside and outside. Like, after Galladay went down, they were like, all right, Kadarius, go outside. And he handled that fine. So, like, he's not just stuck to the Sterling Shepard role. I think that's notable. But the talk of the week is not just Toney. It's also Devontae Booker. How are you handling Devontae Booker on the waiver wire? I mean, after Barkley went down, he had like the full Saquon role for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think he had like 18 or 19 touches, and Gary Brightwell, who would be next up, had 0.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It's hard to get excited about Devontae Booker in theory, but we know, over the course of time that what really matters is the workload. And it looks like he's going to get it. The Giants offense, despite all these freaking injuries, their offense has been okay. So, the offensive environment is okay for Devontae Booker. He's a competent receiving back, and it looks like he's got a chance to get the full workload. So, yeah, he's a priority pickup. Kadarius Toney, it was reported that he suffered an injury too. I think it was Jordan that reported that.
If he did, I missed it. What, did he like break his hand on the guy's helmet or something like that?
No, an ankle injury.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know the extent of that. That's probably something that we won't figure out until the practice reports come out on Wednesday. But it's a situation to monitor. We're recording this on early Tuesday afternoon.
Daniel Jones, obviously in the concussion protocol, we don't know if he'll get cleared for week 6. I would feel better about using Booker if it's not the draft, Mike Glennon in there, if it is Daniel Jones, obviously. But, by the time when you're doing waivers, you're not going to know. I think there's a chance that Daniel Jones gets cleared, though. And so I would probably play it like that.
Man, did you see that series of events, though? I mean, he took it really hard, helmet to helmet, and then he got up and he was like, almost fell back down. Like it was tough to watch.
Yeah, I know. That stuff is scary.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Eagles. They have a game Thursday against Tampa, which has just been like such a ridiculous spot for opposing pass games. I mean, people aren't even trying to run on the Bucs anymore. So you get into this spot where Devontae Smith has been playing so well. Jalen Hurts has been absolutely balling. I mean, it's like impossible for Jalen Hurts to get less than 20 points in fantasy. He's so ridiculous. So it's an exciting spot for the Eagles pass game. Of course, what you see out of their win down in Carolina, pretty good win for them.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts he's the QB3 overall, and he's not only giving you high scores, but he's been consistent with a high floor. In all 5 games, in all 5 weeks, he's finished as a top 10 fantasy quarterback on the week. So, I mean, God, what an absolute steal in every form of fantasy he was. And hopefully he can continue to improve. I mean, I think that if you just go back and watch him play at Alabama and his trajectory and his progression, I mean, he has come such a long way. Last week, Miles Sanders, during clock killing mode, ran out of bounds twice. And he has struggled with like ball security. And I wonder if this is going to be a big Gainwell week because, as you mentioned, pass rates explode against Tampa Bay. Number one, they project to play from behind number 2. And then Miles Sanders made these errors in this last game. I think that this could be a big Kenny Gainwell week.
49ers, I mean, it's clear they don't like Trey Sermon, man. I mean, it's just obvious. He was a healthy scratch in week 1. Raheem Mostert goes down, and Trey Sermon's role doesn't really expand. Eli Mitchell's does. The only time they gave Trey Sermon work is when Eli Mitchell was down also. In this game, in week 5, Eli Mitchell had 44 snaps. Trey Sermon played 2. So, I mean, it's like draft capital to Kyle Shanahan is not that predictive. Like, he trades up for a guy in the 3rd round. It just doesn't matter. So, is what it is. Eli Mitchell very clearly the lead back here, but he is losing work to the fullback Kyle Juszczyk, who had 42 snaps, 19 of them slot or wide. Sad news, though, George Kittle not only got scratched for this game, but went on IR, so they're going to be without George Kittle for a bit. Trey Lance's first full start. His box score would have looked better. He got stuffed at the 1-yard line on twice on rushing plays. It would have looked a lot better if he got there. Still had a pretty decent day in fantasy. What do you see out of Trey Lance's first full start and anything else on the 49ers?
Yeah, some notable offensive skill position players for which the 49ers have traded up under Kyle Shanahan. Joe Williams, Dante Pettis, Trey Sermon, Brandon Ayuk, and Trey Lance. How are we looking here? We're not looking too good, are we?
I mean, it's not. It doesn't. He doesn't put him out there. He just is like screw it. I'm just not gonna play him. And he doesn't care about the capital. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't. Or the fact that Elijah Mitchell looks way better than Trey Sermon. I mean, I thought that Sermon did take a step forward, from week 3 to week 4, but then Eli Mitchell comes back and he's playing at a different speed than Trey Sermon. So, and people are like, should we drop Trey Sermon? You could drop Trey Sermon. I think he's droppable. I think that it depends on, how big your bench is. I mean, in the 20-man roster leagues, like I'm keeping him as my 20th guy, but most people don't play in leagues where the rosters are that big. So yeah, I mean, would I rather have Ramondre Stevenson than Trey Sermon? Absolutely, I would. But yeah, I think that Elijah Mitchell just looks a lot better than Trey Sermon out there. They know that. They've seen that in practice. It's obvious in the games. So I think that they're going to roll with Elijah Mitchell, until the next event occurs.
Seattle Seahawks, one of the most impactful injuries of the season. Russ Wilson mangled his finger in that game on Thursday. It looks like it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks that Russ is going to miss. Obviously, devastating blow to DK Metcalf, to Tyler Lockett, bringing Geno Smith in there. Like, I don't think Geno Smith is the worst backup in the entire league, but he's certainly not one of the best. What's your expectations going forward for the Seahawks with Geno in there?
Well, I don't even think it really matters what you think about Geno, because their defense is so bad. They're going to have to be aggressive on offense. I'm worried about. I think that the targets are going to be there for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett still. I'm worried about Chris Carson, though, big time right now, because I think that this is morphing into maybe like a 3, even 4-man committee potentially. Chris Carson was probably our favorite of the quote unquote dead zone running backs. And he's another one who looks to be falling by the wayside. And, it's not good for him that their defense is bad, especially when they're going to give a lot of passing down snaps to the other guys.
Yeah. Tampa Bay, I played Leonard Fournette in cash on DraftKings. I was a little worried, though, that Gio Bernard was going to take like all the pass game work. It didn't happen. And credit to Lenny, man. He's earned this role. Lenny, 29 routes on 45 Brady dropbacks. Gio only ran 9 routes. Rojo ran 4. So, like, we're getting into a spot now where Lenny is dominating Rojo in base downs, and Lenny is ahead of Gio in pass downs. Now, Gio did catch a 10-yard touchdown in the red zone, but still, this Lenny role is pretty good. Another blowout win for the Bucs, and like their pass rate over expectation is completely off the charts, and they do it when they're killing teams. Like Mike Evans caught 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, I believe, in this game. Like, they don't care. I think Brady wants to like set every record in the history of man. What'd you see out of the Bucs?
Yeah, and that's not, the worst pass defense in the world either in Miami's. Antonio Brown, though, and I know there's been some ups and downs. He missed a game on the COVID list. He had one slow. He had a pretty slow game in week 2. But man, when he's been rolling, like he has been rolling. And I read about, he underwent a knee surgery that didn't get a lot of pub during the offseason, because nobody was really talking about Antonio Brown because he stayed out of the news, which was a good thing for him. But he underwent this knee surgery in May, and Bruce Arians was talking about how Antonio Brown has never had a surgery in his life, and then he needed this surgery. He'd been dealing with this injury to his knee since his final days in Pittsburgh, and then he got to training camp, and he just ripped it up. And I mean, he looked like one of the best players on the field. And when he's been rolling, when he's been healthy, and he's been out there a lot this year, he has looked uncoverable at every level of the field. I mean, Brady has even missed him for some opportunities, and he's dropped a few too, but he has looked just, I mean, nobody can cover this dude. And he's going to consistently get single coverage because he plays in the same offense with Godwin and Evans and, all the other dudes. So they're freaking dangerous offensively.
One point I made on the solo pod that I can reiterate here is with Rob Gronkowski out, there is more red zone looks to go around. In other words, they're just not using O.J. Howard and Cam Brate in the same way that they used Rob Gronkowski. So, like, we know they're not going to stop throwing, but it's more likely to go to wide receivers. And the big sweat, the big team I had on FanDuel was a Brady double with Evans and AB. Last thing we're going to do today is the Washington football team. I mean, Ricky Seals-Jones, we're like scraping 2 sticks together to try to get tight end play. Ricky Seals-Jones comes in and gets a bigger target share than Logan Thomas saw all season. Ricky Seals-Jones played on 82 out of 83 snaps, 43 of them in the slot, 10 of them out wide, 541-0. Could have had a much bigger game, had a couple end zone targets that could have been caught. I think he drew a penalty deep down the field as well. And now Curtis Samuel is hurt again, aggravated the groin. De'Ami Brown, I don't know what his status is. Cam Sims is hurt as well. Like, they really need Ricky Seals-Jones. It's crazy to say, but like I would probably play Ricky Seals-Jones over Big Bob Tonyan right now. I think.
Yeah.
The other story here is this Antonio Gibson stress fracture news that came out. You know, I don't think it's that big a deal. Like, stress fracture, all these guys have stress fractures. You know, it just is what it is. He's been able to play through it. No problem. Did get 2 short touchdowns in this game. What do you see out of the football team? Another loss for them, this time to the Saints.
No, I think you did a pretty comprehensive summary there. One note is that Marshawn Lattimore, who you never know which Marshawn Lattimore is going to show up in a given week, but he really showed up against McLaurin, and 11 targets, only 46 scoreless yards. So that happens sometimes.
That is going to do it for this NFC team by team podcast. Reminder that if you're not subscribed to this podcast, we would appreciate it if you do hit subscribe. It is free. If you are on YouTube, hit the subscribe button there as well. Helps us out and lets you know every time we have a new show. For Evan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.